Good morning to everyone in the media here and staff and members from the Inspector General's office. I'm doing this press conference today to basically share with the public where we are right now regarding the property tax auctions that took place in 2012 and 2013. I will basically go through a little history and update everyone as to the steps that we have taken in the Office of the Lieutenant Governor and what we expect to do going forward. After that, we'll be able to answer any questions you might have. In the room today, we have members from the IG office, the director, Mr. Van Beverhout, along with his assistant and Delia. I know Thomas, but I forget Delia. Delia Thomas, who have been extremely active in the whole process. On September 15th, 2014, the Inspector General's office forwarded a report to then Governor John D. Young regarding their findings for the auctions that took place in 2012 and 2013. The report set forth the major findings related to real property auctions which were conducted in those 2 years. The report indicated, and I think most of you already are familiar with this, but we will just go through and indicate again for the record. The report indicated a few areas of concern, to include failure to send out adequate notices and attachments to property owners, auction of properties that were not eligible for sale, questionable record keeping as to bidders and actual bidding amounts, failure to adhere to payment timeframes, and finally, manipulation of the bidding process. Those were the basic findings that were outlined in the letter sent to Governor D. Young in 2014, September 2014. As a result of this, the Virgin Islands lost thousands of dollars because of mismanagement of the auction process, and the public trust, which is even a greater concern. The public trust in the process was tainted. Upon assuming office, even prior to assuming office, I sat with the Inspector General to get a basic overview of the findings of his office and got a good idea of their understanding of what took place and their understanding of what they placed in the report and the rationale behind it. I put together a specialized team in my office to conduct our internal investigation, and we discovered on our own some additional irregularities, and as such, I announced earlier this year that we would have been voiding those 104, 105 properties that were in question for various reasons. And as such, those property sales were voided officially in July of this year, and we have taken basically the following steps. We have contacted the bidders through a series of processes such as mail, telephone, personal service, to try to get them to understand that in fact these properties that they acquired through the bidding process were actually voided. We continue to be in communication with the Inspector General's office, as some of these properties were voided for the reasons I indicated earlier, but then some of them were also voided because of the questionable and what we think are fraudulent activities surrounding the bidding process, the manipulation of the bidding process. We internally are beginning to tighten up on the whole process and procedure that we will take for any actions going into the future, where we will tighten the controls and tighten the procedures and share those procedures with the public in a timely basis. Today, I am going to share with the media the list of property owners that will be given access back to their property, or they will be given back their properties as a result of the canceling of these transactions. If they are not already in a package that you receive, you can receive those individuals' names after the press conference is done. We will be issuing over $2.3 million in checks back to these bidders that acquire these properties. We have on hand checks ready to be issued to these bidders. We have checks for property actions for the St. Thomas, St. John district. We also have checks for the St. Croix districts, St. Croix district, and what we are saying is there will be over about 72 checks that will be issued to these bidders that took part in the process, and those 72 checks would amount to over $2.3 million. Not everyone that participated in the bidding process will receive refunds. Those individuals not receiving refunds would be able to, well, first of all, let me back up. Everyone that took part in the bidding process and have concern as to whether or not we have a check for you, you can contact the Lieutenant Governor's office and speak to the legal counsel there, Attorney McLean, and you can specifically and individually find out at that point in time if you have a refund check waiting for you. We still have some checks to be printed by the Department of Finance, but we do also have checks on hand right now as we speak. So your inquiries can begin right now to our office, to Attorney McLean, to see if you have a refund check coming. Some of the refund checks range in amounts from over $300,000 to as low as, I think, $2,500. So that's the range of refund checks that we have available and will be issuing to individuals who participated in this process. We are specifically asking individuals who are now going to get back their property to take the opportunity to get right with the Office of the Lieutenant Governor and be able to pay the taxes that force these properties, in the most part, to be auctioned previously. We will be doing another auction based on our assessment of things by September 2016. So basically, we are giving all individuals the time from now until then to clean up the situation that's in front of them regarding their individual properties and get those items out of the way. If not, then these properties will go right back on the action block come September 2016. So it's we are basically hitting the reset button for all of these property owners that may have lost their properties in these auction sales, and giving them one final opportunity to do right and get their taxes in line. If not, then the properties will revert back to the auction block for September 2016, the way we are looking at it right now. We will not be sharing the names today. Well, we will not be sharing the names of individuals that will be receiving checks. We will not be sharing those names with the public. We will only be sharing the names of property tax original property owners who will get their properties back. Those are the only names that we'll be sharing today with the media. And again, I'll reiterate, if you know you participated in the action process, you make contact with Attorney McLean in this office, and Attorney McLean will indicate to you whether we have a check ready for you or whether we are in the process of preparing a check for you. If you are not in either of those categories where a check is on hand for you or is being prepared for you, then Attorney McLean would explain to you why that situation is the way it is. So if you are not going to be receiving a check from us as a refund, our attorney will indicate to you the exact reason why you will not be. And there are a few varying reasons why one would not immediately receive a refund check, because their situation might continue to be under investigation. At this point, I want the public to understand that we will be fully getting this action process to a point where the public will have full confidence in what we are doing and why we do it. The law provides for the Office of the Lieutenant Governor to auction properties for failure to meet taxes, and we will publish and share with the public on a regular basis what the law says and exactly how we are going to be proceeding. And one thing that may have been the overriding factor in a lot of these cases was providing adequate notice to the property owners in advance, with a lot of time, to let them know that their property is in question, that they owe a certain amount of taxes, and if in fact they do not meet the requirements, whether by getting in contact with the office, doing payment plans, or however we allow for them to do it, that these properties will be placed on the auction block. So it will be our specific duty to meet all the rights that property owners have coming to them, as far as notification and as far as sharing information with them, and as far as sharing with them our procedures that we'll be following in the office. I think what took place, based on our internal investigation and based on the full report that the Inspector General was able to conduct, it is a shame and our people should not have to go through that process again when it comes to their property. Your property is the most valuable thing that you would have. Real estate is something that's extremely valuable, and the manner in which it was handled that allowed individuals to lose their property in the manner that it was conducted is basically a shame, is the only way we can say it. That approach will be 100% cleaned up going into the future. So if you have any questions at this point, I am ready to answer them. If the questions are more in line with the Inspector General is here and would also be ready to answer your questions. And if it becomes totally legal stuff, we have our attorney, McLean, in the back of the room, and, and she will be able to answer. So basically, we want to answer all the questions you have regarding this whole situation surrounding property tax auctions and what happened and what's going to happen in the future, etc. So we are ready to take your questions.
It's been a very I'll explain you one thing. I went to first action, which was in 2012. This doesn't have anything to do with you because you just came into the situation here, right? Now, as far as I'm concerned, the action, I have no problem with that. They told you to bring your money in, they took your money, you had till a certain time to get any money. Now, the problem I have is that when it came time for the day to be up to get my money, I got a call saying the people have paid their money and you cannot get the property anymore. I said, fine, but at least I'll get back the money within a reasonable time. I made inquiries here, there, everywhere. This is 2015, and I have not received my money up to now. And that, I figure the government didn't have the money to pay people back. So that told the time. I was coming with a suggestion. Next time you have action, I ain't going to the more. Next time you have action, put the people money in an extra account. So that when the person who owns the land pay the taxes, that money will be refunded to the bidder.
We have a revamping of the entire action process to include how monies are handled and controlled and accounted for.
Another thing, I've been calling your office for the last 2 months. And all I wanted was a simple answer on the telephone to find out what was the process in regards to getting the money back. You follow what I'm saying? Because I will explain you something and you might not understand it. Every day, people my age are dying. You follow what I'm saying? And like I told Attorney McLean, I ain't here in this world forever. I would at least like to enjoy my money that I work hard for, that I took out of my federal credit account to go under action and pay. Right. It might seem simple, but when you reach my age, you want to know that you got your ducks in order because, hey, God don't give us authority.
It's never a simple thing when it comes to money and refunding monies, etc. So,
but it's a simple thing to pay.
Well, it's not always as simple as it looks on the outside. So what I'm saying, now that we are at the point where we are at, we will be able to work with each individual case for individuals that know that they participated in the process regarding whether we have a check for them, or a check is being processed for them, other questions on the table, or other things are being investigated. So on a
I want the system.
Wait, hold. On an individual basis, as I indicated in the conference earlier, you make contact with our attorney and she can indicate to you specifically where your situation is and take it from there as far as finding a way to remedy it.
And want to give you another example of problems. I went one time to the tax assessor. While I was there, the person whose property I had got an action, they were there with their receipts. You understand what I'm saying? That they had paid their bills. And it so happened that because of the transfer from finance department to lieutenant governor office, the people payment were not there. I for myself told the people, well, I will refund you your property because I knew the lady it was her grandson that was there. He documents saying that they had paid their property taxes and the property was actually, no, I for myself so paying fair for you to own property.
Well, Mr. Stula, we recognize that during the property tax auctions that took place in those 2 years, there were some properties that should not have been auctioned. We recognize that. We recognize that as a fact. And for those reasons, along with other reasons, these cancellations took place. And the whole remedy process is going to be done now on a one-by-one basis to make sure that every individual is clean. The property owners are going to be reset basically to where they were before, and the process will start over again. And we will be getting specific guidelines and procedures that we will share with the public, and we will have our internal individuals trained as to exactly how these actions should be handled in the future. Any other questions?
Good morning, sir. Jonathan Austin from the Daily News. You've spoken about regaining the public trust, and part of the Inspector General's report very specifically suggested that one or more officials within the Lieutenant Governor's office had participated in this criminal activity. He called it the bid manipulation scheme, or were aware of it happening and failed to prevent it from continuing. So it seems like while it's good to, after the fact, be determining what happened, can you specifically address the individuals who were suggested by the IG to have known about this? Have you identified them? Do they still work for the government? Are you taking action? Is this, in your opinion, a criminal situation? And will charges be filed?
That's a lot of questions, but all of them come on to the same basic thing. The investigations continue, and individuals in my office are the subject of investigations, I'm understanding, and once those investigations are complete, all information will be shared with the public as far as the who, what, where, why, and how. As of this moment, I can't say any more regarding what may not have transpired specifically with individuals working for the office. However, between the Inspector General and the Attorney General, it's in their court. We, from my office now, will be focusing on the specific procedures going into the future, the controls that we put in place, and the information that we will share with the public, the notification procedures, and the entire normal set of guidelines that should be followed when we attempt a serious thing such as separating one from their real property. So that is where we are focusing on right now, and we are confident that we have a handle on all of the individual transactions that took place, and various transactions fall in different categories. Some are in the area that would be bordering on the criminal side. Others would be simply notification, lack of proper notifications, etc. But we have a handle on every transaction that took place in these actions for those 2 years.
Just to quickly follow up, when you say individuals in my office are subject to an investigation, you're saying the individuals he may have identified still work for the government?
According to the Inspector General, and the Attorney General, their investigations continue. I am not at liberty right now to share the status of these individuals. However, Mr. Austin, you will get all the information as things develop. I promise you, you know, I share a background in public information. I did this for 5 years with the VI National Guard, so I 100% believe in sharing the information as it becomes available and it's factual. I have no reason to hold the information and squeeze it back. So you will get that full information as soon as we have conclusions to the process that's taking place now.
May I ask the Inspector General a question?
You can.
Understanding you have limitations to what you can share, can you say that you identified individuals by name and you shared that with the Attorney General or with law enforcement?
Good morning, Stephen Van Beverhout, VA Inspector General. I can't comment specifically on people we may or may not have identified. It's an ongoing investigation. The Lieutenant Governor has indicated that they have taken steps to stop the mechanism that allowed for these type of activities to continue occurring. So with the process that they're going through in preparing for the auctions in approximately a year from now, give or take a few months, they will have sufficient steps and controls and procedures to prevent a similar occurrence from happening. It's an active investigation. If people within the Lieutenant Governor's office have been identified, and of course it all comes down to being able to prove it, and the Attorney General is the one who makes the call as to whether there's sufficient evidence to prosecute or not prosecute.
Could you identify the agencies involved in the investigation for us?
Well, it would be the Lieutenant Governor's office and individuals who may have bid on properties. There are no other agencies.
I'm sorry. Is the Federal Inspector General involved?
No. This is strictly a local. VI Inspector General's office and the Virgin Islands Attorney General.
My question to you, gentlemen, specifically you, Lieutenant Governor, is that you mentioned that your office, since you took office, has conducted further investigations into this matter. Are you at liberty right now to tell us what additional information that you referred to has been uncovered as a result of the work of your office?
Well, not specifically, other than basically a timing and the manner in which notices were sent out and how they were sent out, and if in fact individual property owners actually ever received such notices because of some mail that were returned by the post office, for example. So those are, in looking at what took place, it gave reasonable doubt as to whether or not every homeowner was properly notified, and the manner in notification, in notifying them, I think the law provides for different ways that you do notify, do send notices out, and we did not see that as happening the way it should have been happening.
One more quick question, sir. Personally, do you see this as an event that just happened because of all of the reasons you cited, or do you ever consider that this was an event that someone chose to take advantage of from the beginning to create a scenario in which improper land transfers could occur, taking advantage of the property owners?
I can't say. I can't go into the minds of the individuals that were actually a part of the process. But I think as human beings, sometimes you may think that you are in a situation that might be easy to manipulate, put it that way. And if you think that that's the situation that you are in, and the temptation comes to a point, you may want to do so. But I can't say, you know, all the premeditation that may have gone into it one way or the other.
When the actionnaires receive the refunding, what is the interest rate, and will they get the interest rate, and after 1 day, will they get the interest rate?
It's going to be a 4% interest that by law has to be paid to these individuals. When the checks are issued by the Office of the Lieutenant Governor, there would not be interest issued immediately. The checks would be refunded only in the amounts of the original amount paid to the office for that property. We will then be computing the actual amount that each individual is owed in interest. That is a source of funding to cover the interest that, as Lieutenant Governor and as the government of the Virgin Islands, we will have to put our hands on. The monies that were originally acquired from the auctions were not in an interest-bearing account, but in fact, it was in an account. And that's where the source of the refunds is coming from. However, interest was not, is not going to be a part of your check that you're going to get, your initial refund check that you're going to get from us, but we will indicate to you how much interest is due to you, and we will then, from this office, acquire a source of funding to make whole the remainder of the individuals that have interest coming to them.
A source of funding?
Everything.
You have to get legislation.
Everything in the government is a source of funding. If in fact,
I don't work for the government. My money comes from my source.
Mr. Stoulard, if in fact, this money originally was placed in an interest-bearing account, then that interest could have been rolled over to the individuals during the refund process, but it was not in an interest-bearing account. Therefore, for the purpose of refunding interest, we have to find a source.
I want to say one thing else. You see how you call this conference? This should have been done so that the rest of the people who didn't have the interest in coming like I did would be notified of what the situation is, and they might have had questions, they could have asked you. So I thank you for having this, because now I am more informed than I was yesterday afternoon at 5:30 when I heard it on the radio.
But the idea is to share with the public. You see, the media has a role, and it's not...
The media ain't going to ask questions.
The media has a role, and the media plays its role. Sometimes we may not be happy with... Mr. Stoulard, hold 1 second. Sometimes we may not be happy with all what we think the media might be doing, but the media has a role to share with the public this information that we are now sharing. And everyone here in the media will be given a list of all the property owners who will get their properties turned back to them. That alone should trigger the interest, where if a property owner now is getting back their property, a call to the Lieutenant Governor office as to where do we go from here will be in order, and the media would also share with the public that refund checks are available to those that took part in the process. So individuals who know that they dished out from wherever they got the money from, their good money to buy property, would know that, hey, there might be a check available for me. So we are hoping that through this press conference, everyone will be touched in some way who have any association with the auction process, and as such we can deal with them on a one-on-one basis and make every individual whole.
I want to ask you one other question. What will be the termination date of the interest? The 4% you just took. What day? It has to be from the time I get my check in my hand.
Mr. Stoulard.
But
Mr. Stoulard, I don't understand your question. I'm saying When you sit with Attorney McLean, she'll go through all of that with you, but the accumulation of the interest would start from the day that you put your money down on the table, and it's 4%, and you know you could do the math, and it will be all the way until you receive that check in your hand.
I thank you very much, because she had my information now, but the change since then, because that was a year ago.
She was not here a year ago.
She was.
She was not here a year ago.
We have 72 sources of checks that were sent in
72 checks will be
during
printed.
this incident, covering 105 properties. I guess my question would be addressed to Mr. Van Beverhout. When you look over the sources of these 72 checks, can you spot any pattern or any commonalities among the 72 people whose checks were involved in this manipulation scheme?
Let me pause a second. And let you further explain what the 72 checks actually are. We have 72 refund checks to be issued. We aren't looking at 72 checks that we got in, okay, to see any pattern of these checks. We are issuing 72 refund checks, Government of the Virgin Islands checks, to these individuals who originally paid money for the action. So we will just be issuing these checks to, if you purchase a property and now the owner is getting back their property and you paid $30,000 for the property, we will now issue a check in your name for $30,000, the amount that you paid for the property. Okay? So I don't know as far as a pattern what you might be referring to. I may have missed.
For instance, if there was an examination of the persons who paid in the bidding process, if it was determined that perhaps 50 of the 72 checks came from real estate salesmen, or something along those lines of surveyors, contractors.
Okay. Well, it's not as it relates to the 72 checks, but it relates to the individual transactions that took place, and that is why the investigation continues, because there were some irregularities that were discovered when the process continues to be investigated. You know, you see relationships that may have developed along the way, and that's what the IG and ultimately the Attorney General may be looking at, if in fact they are taken to the next level where prosecution would take place.
Just a quick math question. In July, it was announced the voiding of the sale of 153 parcels, and today it was 104 or 105. Are we talking about the same? Is there overlap?
No, it's 105. It's 105. I think the 153 might have been the total original number of sales, but some sales were totally clean on both ends. So I think that's where we end up with 105 that are questionable, and that's where the jump-off point is. Any other questions? Then I would like to thank the media for being here, including the media person, Mr. Stulard. I don't know which media you represent, but I thank the civilian media person, Mr. Stulard, for being here, and everyone. And all I'm saying is, if you need more specific information to complete your stories so that we can get as much accuracy out as possible regarding what transpired here today, we'll be willing and ready to share with you that information. But we are hoping that once the public understands what has taken place here, those who may have expended funds to purchase property can come and inquire to see if we have a check for them, and those property owners whose property were the subject of the auctions would know that they have control back of their property with approximately 1 more year to make whole on their property before we roll these properties back over into the auction rolls. Okay, thank you again for being here today.